Hello, and welcome to yet another episode of Biscuit Town. I am your host, Baby Biscuit McGee. Perhaps it's a little known fact that our program title is actually inspired by the first track on the album The Ooze by artist King Cruel. However, it should be noted that my moniker, Baby Biscuit McGee, is actually something I came up with as a mere baby little tween. Ultimately, I like to think of Biscuit Town as a home for awkward, creative, quiet outcasts to release their full creative potential. And when you think about it, Biscuit Town is Baby Biscuit's home, just like Dayton is for Brie Hope. We've got a great show for you tonight, folks. Stay tuned. Our guest tonight is helping Dayton in major ways. She is an educator, cultural worker, and community builder. Her primary focus is restorative and racial justice, as well as psychosocial trauma and resilience. She facilitates this through circles, trainings, workshops, and her work as adjunct professor at Rice State University. A child of Punjabi Sikh diaspora, her latest endeavor can be found right here in the heart of Dayton. It is my pleasure to welcome to the program Ms. Darsheel Kaur. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to start by asking you, what is the Heart and its mission?
That's a great question. Interestingly enough, we are figuring out our official mission statement. But the Heart, it stands for the House of Healing Arts. And we are a collective of artists who focus healing. We do our work not just for individual gain or for notoriety, but to really heal ourselves and our communities. We live together and we invite people into our community through community events, like you said, workshops, circles, book exchanges, and community dinners. Yeah, we're really trying to just create a hub and a space for many of us young people who are active in the community to come back into a home environment and kind of work on our internal and interpersonal work together.
That sounds awesome. So it's kind of like the headquarters for everything you're doing in the community.
Yeah.
Okay. So what, in your opinion, makes circles such a valuable teaching method?
That's also a great question. Circles, so first I'll just start off by saying that historically, all of us, if we trace our ancestral lineage back far enough, we sat in circle to tell stories, make decisions, maybe it was around a campfire or a tree or wherever it may be. So being in circle, I think, is something that is innate within us that maybe we practice regularly, maybe we don't. So I think it's really drawing upon this inner wisdom that we already have. So while I'm an educator, I really believe that, all of the knowledge that we need is already inside of us, and we can use our lived experiences and learning from the lived experiences of other people in the circle and to educate ourselves. So I think that that's really valuable, is for people to really be able to speak from their own center and not have to speak for anybody else or, pontificate about experiences they've never had.
Right.
And center their learning from that. And I think that makes the learning kind of stick more and relate it to their own day-to-day life.
Awesome. I believe you had mentioned this would be a model better for schools than just everybody listen to the teacher, but everybody contribute what they think.
Exactly.
Exactly. All right. Let's see. You envision a world without guns, police, and prisons. How can we achieve this goal?
Yeah, it's a big vision, and there are people, abolitionists, is the terminology, which you may have heard of the abolitionists during the time of enslavement, people who were trying to eradicate the system of slavery. Mm-hmm. And so modern day abolitionists are trying to create an environment where one day we can live as a society without using prisons and police and just using violent mechanisms to deal with issues in our communities or to make us more safe and secure. So it may not actually happen in my lifetime that, there's no more prisons and, but things like circles and building community and learning how to work through conflict together is all about creating the conditions. So we have to create the conditions to be able to get there, because if you just, eradicate prisons and police when without preparing the people to be able to create new mechanisms to deal with the things that we often call on for the police or, use the prisons for, then it would just create more chaos.
This is true. Is there any purpose you feel like police serve in our institution? You think they're just for punishment, or sometimes they help recover something that's stolen, or
Yeah, definitely. Individual police officers definitely help in different circumstances that they may be in. So abolitionists are more talking about the institutions, like the institution of policing, which includes everything, all layers of that institution, and really looking at the creation of the institution as well, which the original police in this country were there to enforce enslavement. And so it's not to say that individual officers are not good people and that they don't mean well for their communities. It's more to say that the function of this institution, if it's really there to make us safe, do we really feel safe right now? Is it reaching its purpose, its stated purpose? Or do we need to kind of reconfigure a little bit so that all of our needs are met as a society, whether that is having people who help us find, lost children, or, on the side of the road when our tire busts or something and we need some support and some security. So what are the problems that we're actually calling on the police for? And then how can we kind of think creatively on solutions that actually serve those purposes?
Very nice. We'll be right back with our guest, Darsheel Kaur. This is Biscuit Town.
I am going to purchase a prime restaurant for West Dayton because I believe that we deserve it. Third Perk has a home and it's going to stay where it's at. But I was thinking, well, maybe we can do something else. And again, I thought about the Swats Club. As I'm putting my new project together, I wanted to remind West Dayton of what we had in the Swats Club, because as African Americans, I think we've forgotten what rich culture we've had.
We're back with our guest, Darsheel. I noticed your shirt today, Trayvon, and we were talking about the subject of policing and that institution. And of course, in those terms, most Black people's relationship with the police is not a good one. We don't necessarily trust the police. So how can we transform that before abolishing the institution?
Yeah, so first I just want to say that today would have been Trayvon Martin's 25th birthday.
Wow.
Which is why I'm wearing the hoodie.
Okay.
And, also that was really a pivotal moment in my personal life. Before Trayvon Martin was killed, I understood how Sikhs, me as a Sikh, my family, my dad wearing a turban and a beard, or even just South Asians in general had experienced racism through, after 9/11. But then when Trayvon Martin was killed, and it was really it was just this image, the stereotype image, which caused him to be murdered, which was the same thing that our community had experienced. I was like, oh, wow, there's shared experience, even though there's like different histories and, you know, different cultures that we live. So I think that understanding, really starting from our own experiences is a great place to start, like, you know, like we were talking about with circles. And I'm very much an advocate for connecting with police officers as human beings versus as police officers.
Right.
So oftentimes, you know, there are community dialogues, but the officer is showing up as an officer in their uniform with their gun. And that may bring up all of the, you know, maybe the trauma or the stereotypes or just the negative imagery or experience that people have. Maybe they have imagery from videos they saw online. So I think it's harder to make that human connection when there's that kind of barrier with, you know, the profession, and it's kind of a power dynamic. But when you just sit down with two human beings, then you can actually see that, okay, we all want our communities to be safe. You know, there may be some common ground and some work that can be done together, like cleaning up the streets, for example, or just different community projects, starting community gardens. So I think that's a good place to start, so that it doesn't become this like fight between individual, you know, police as people, like, and then black people or black and brown people or black, brown, poor people, anyone who's kind of negatively impacted by the police, because that's not what it's about. It's about the institution.
Right. Okay. What are some of the greatest challenges you face accomplishing your goal of reflective community building?
I think lack of trust, kind of, you know, what we were just talking about. There is a lack of trust, and from my studies in trauma and historical trauma, the institution of enslavement or even colonization and genocide, those systems that lasted hundreds of years actually created this, you know, lack of trust, because they perpetuated lies of our inferiority and that we couldn't trust ourselves or trust people who look like us. And so that's why we really focus on kind of reconnection with the self through self-reflection and through vulnerability and sharing with one another.
Okay.
But, you know, people have more pressing issues in their lives. You know, like people are trying to get their bills paid and they have to go to work to feed their kids, you know. So if someone's basic needs aren't met, it's going to be hard for them to really set a time to focus on healing on the personal level. When, you know, living in poverty or just living under a high stress environment keeps you focusing on the daily grind.
Right. So it's like alleviating that burden so that they can think about their own personal care.
Exactly.
Okay. That's, how do we accomplish that? Just make more jobs.
Yeah, and you know, create alternative economies too, so we can really be supporting each other. So most of the time I try to have food at the circles, you know, and the more connected we are into the community, so there's a great organization called Neighborhood Over Politics. And so when someone comes and they have some kind of issue, they'll say, this is who you can call who works for the city to help alleviate that problem that you have. So sharing resources in the community that can help alleviate those things also builds trust, builds relationship, and then hopefully we can get to this healing thing. But I think healing's all of that. Healing doesn't have to just be when you're like by yourself in a circle with me. It's a day-to-day kind of awareness, and the more you can realize that you can make change, then that can even build hope generate hope within yourself. Like, okay, like there's some light possibility, you know, at the end of the tunnel here. Like I can, not even at the end of the tunnel, right now. There's possibility for growth and for change now. And so what more can we do together?
Awesome. Let's see. What is the most fulfilling part about the work you do in our community?
I think the most fulfilling part is that it helps me with my own journey as well. and it's just like this. It's a circle. You know, it's circular. It's not linear. So, when I'm being fed, and then the people around me are being fed. So even just the people that I live with, we have our house meetings in circle, and we get to know. I get to hear from them how this process is helping them grow. So I may have this big vision, right, as an abolitionist, but then when I see like the spark in other people, once they start living it out, and they're like, yeah, this does feel better than the other way, or how I was doing it before. I didn't realize this was possible. And while that's happening, I'm also being fed in the process. So it's like a mutual, like we call it collective care, you know, so creating systems of collective care. Yeah, it's just really beautiful. It's like another way is possible, and we're trying to live it out right now.
Wonderful. How can people get involved and help with the heart?
That's a great question. We don't currently have any social media, but you can follow my personal social media, which is just my name, Darsheel Kaur, on Facebook or on Instagram. And then as soon as we have some kind of online space for you to be able to follow, you'll see it on my social media.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you for being my guest today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.